Fernando Henrique Cardoso, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
In a recent interview, you talked about a general lack of enthusiasm in Brazil. You said there's a sense of dejection in my country. Why is Brazil downbeat?
I would say basically because there is a lack of trust on the political life in Brazil. Not in one specific person or personality or the president, but the Congress, the way how the political people treats, national problems, and also because of corruption among the political leadership. You see?
But look at the big picture. I said Brazil is lagging behind India and China. It's true, but still you have a growth rate between 3 and 4%. You have poverty reduction on a very impressive scale. I don't understand why, given that big economic picture, Brazil would be, as you put it, in a crisis of identity.
I don't say a crisis of identity. It's a sense of malaise, if I can say in French. You see, we are not feeling well. I mean, this is middle-class people, I must say. People who read the newspaper or try to follow what's going on in Congress. Because the normal citizen in Brazil is rather expressing what you said before. Because the economy is going up. It's true that's not as high as in other countries or even in Brazil in other time. But anyhow, 4% is not that bad. And it's also true that you are reducing poverty. So in that sense, the normal citizen feels that the standing of their lives is improving.
But you see, the reason I said national identity as a way of characterizing your thoughts is because you have said that there's a lack of cohesion about Brazilian national life. You say we have no unifying idea or project. Family, religion, political parties, education, they are all fracturing in Brazil.
Well, maybe it's a little bit exaggerated to say they're all fracturing. But the point is that in other moments in Brazilian history, we had the sense that Brazil is making progress. Now we are making progresses.
Well, now you're making more progress than ever before, but you seem less happy and less sure about what Brazil is about.
That's the point. It's because, we are repeating again and again and again in the last decades, after the redemocratization, that Brazil is lacking of education, lack of health. We have the agrarian reform problem, misery, poverty, every day. So Brazil have become convinced that the situation is a situation of despair. It's not true. We are making progress. It's a matter of to get a new consensus. It depends on the leadership, basically. I would say that I don't want to make that criticism to my president. On the contrary, I think that Lula has a symbolic importance in Brazil because he's coming from the working class and now being president. This could be a very important and positive signal. So why not? I would say, I repeat, because of the lack of trust on the in Brazil, they use a label, it's not correct, but anyhow, political class. Those who have the control of the political system are not trusted by the population.
What I get from you, and we'll talk about Lula later, but what I get from you is a real sense of frustration that you had 2 terms in the presidential office and you were not able to change the political culture.
You're right. In the case,
why? Why
in the
did
case
you
of
fail?
political culture, you are right. I changed the country, I suppose.
Well, I'm not sure that you... Do you really believe that? I mean, again, I'm sorry to quote so many of your own words.
In terms of the economy, yes, no doubt.
Yeah, but let's go beyond the economy, because you said... And there's a sense of frustration in what you said. My government, you said, made education universal. Yes. But for what? What they now teach in schools is a disaster.
No. Why?
Well, that's what you said.
Yes, I said. But why? Because our problem was to give access to the population, to the schools. Now it's a problem of quality. But this is different. You see? So we have to improve the quality of education, which is maybe more difficult than just to give access. I'm not a pessimistic vis-à-vis Brazil. Maybe in this interview has a pessimistic tone. That's not the way I feel.
You were seen as a man who was a technocrat, perhaps even seen as a neoliberal by some in economic terms. You certainly hastened the pace of privatization. And yet, for all of your structural economic reforms, you couldn't solve the problem of the 2 Brazils, that is the middle class and the successful upper class in Brazil, who are a very tiny minority, and then the vast numbers, the millions and millions of Brazilians who live in poverty. And you couldn't
for
all of your reforms, tackle that problem of poverty?
You are wrong. Sorry. Because I started, not me, even before, but anyhow, we started a program of transformations in Brazil, and the results are coming. I give you the last result. Last result was about the reduction of poverty. The poverty reduction was very impressive in Brazil. Basically, from 1995 on up to today, the poverty line was 40%, now it's about 28%.
But Mr. Cardoso, if I may interrupt,
yeah?
Many Brazilians will say, actually, poverty reduction became much more successful and speeded up after you left office and after Lula came into power, because Lula spent much more money on social programs, including the very well-known Bolsa Familiar, which has lifted millions of people from abject poverty.
No, the first step was when we stabilized the economy. The poverty line comes down from 40% to 30%. This was the real plan. And then it comes down.
That was the currency, the stabilization of the currency, and really taking on inflation.
Yes.
Which, of course, many people give the credit to Lula for.
Well, but this is people not true. You know, the stabilization was in '95. Before me, I was finance minister, so the inflation came down and remained at that level. Because Lula put together, I'm not against, I'm in favor. He put together different programs I had, and since he is now being beneficiary of a better situation in economic terms, he's giving more money to these people. So this is increasing. I agree with you, but I started. So the change of the Brazilian, situation started with the stabilization program during the government of President Itamar Franco.
All right, well whoever takes the credit.
All social programs started in my government and have been, they are better off now because it's normal that.
Are you now, reflecting on what happened in your presidency and also under Lula, are you now saying that actually I've learned there are limits to market economics as applied to a country like Brazil? You can take privatization and neoliberalism too far.
Let me see. I never was a new liberal, to start with. I'm in favor of the market economy, but I'm also in favor of a very active action by government, by the state. I decided not to privatize some enterprise. Meanwhile, I decided to privatize others. I give you an example, the telecommunication. What happened with telecommunication? We had 800,000 cellular phones. Now we have 120 million cellular phones, and everyone has access to that. If you look at the mining company, what I did with state companies was to transform the state companies into corporations. And that's why now Petrobras, the oil company, is a very important one. Banco do Brasil is performing very well. So that's not enough to conform a nation. We need much more than that. I never was a new liberal, you see.
Let me bring you back then to one of your opening points, which was that despite the progress you now talk about, Brazil still has a fundamental problem with corruption in its political and civic culture.
That's true. That's why I said that the sense that we are not so well is because of the sense that the middle class has, because the middle class has access to information, that corruption is there.
And you have said, if I may put it to you, you've said that Lula, President Lula, has been too lenient on corruption inside his own party. And of course we see 40 officials of his party are now facing trial on charges of buying votes, going back a couple of years. Do you think Lula is personally responsible for that?
I would say personally responsible because he's too strong. I would say Lula could be more affirmative in saying this is wrong. Even very recently, referring to one of them, the former minister has been indicted by the fiscal of the Republic. Lula said very recently, just now, well, I don't believe that he was really involved.
So you think the president should give a clear lead on the issue of corruption?
Well, I think so.
Well, in that case, did you give a clear lead? You had 2 terms in office. What kind of lead did you give your country?
Well, you don't have any one case of a person in my government, indicted or something like that, being safeguarded by me.
Well, that brings me to the essence of my case, if I may say so, because as I understand it, you appointed a federal prosecutor general, Geraldo Brindero, who sat in office for years and received, according to the Brazilian press, over 600 inquiries, I think they're called, into criminal behavior by public officials. Now, the vast majority of those inquiries were simply filed away. I think he even developed a nickname in Brazil as the sort of the filing clerk.
Yeah.
Now, is that because you're telling me there was no wrongdoing at all in power when you were president, or is it simply because he sat on those allegations?
Let me put very clear to you that in Brazil, the fiscal is absolutely independent from the executive branch. Absolutely independent.
But you appointed him.
Yes, but he's independent. He judged by himself. And at that time, several prosecutors were highly motivated by political parties. And they tried to accuse it here and there. I never intervened, never, I stress, in any one of these cases.
But I guess what I'm getting to is this. You say, and you've said it again on this program, Lula has to give a lead. Lula has to be strong.
Yes, but...
Are you telling me there were no charges brought against any MPs or any members of your government over an 8-year period? Are you telling me that politics was entirely clean?
Could you give me the name of one?
No, I'm just asking, do you think politics was entirely clean?
No one has been...
but the fact nobody was charged perhaps suggests that or
even accused by the press. No one minister. No one. And if one has been, or would be, my reaction would be immediately, get out. So that's what I'm saying to you.
All right, let's change it from the personal to the bigger picture. You clearly believe you failed to change the political culture of the country when you were in power, because you've already said that. So hang on, but now that you reflect on it, and now that you see what Lula is going through, how does a leader in Brazil in the future really change this political culture that you say is such a problem?
You know, I'm also a sociologist. You refer to a leader to change a political...
well, it takes leadership.
A political culture. The leader can give an example, can force, but this is a much more ample process than just for one man. I'm not blaming Lula because of that. I'm blaming him in a specific case, not to say no, because he can give offer an example to the nation. To change the political process is a long story. It is necessary to change some rules, some legal, implications, as well as some the culture. What I did, I tried not to allow the party system to intervene too much in the administration, and to give more professionalism to the administration.
Final question for you. From the beginning of this interview, you've given me the impression of a man who ultimately was frustrated that you couldn't do more to change Brazil.
Oh, in that sense,
but
yes.
Do you think Brazil can be changed in the way you want it to be?
My sense is that not me only. Brazil is changing across time. It's become an important country. When I was born in 1931. Brazil at the time, probably no less than 60% would not be able to read or to write. Now, all young people are attending schools. When I was born in Brazil, 80% of the population was rural. So now it's a different country. Yes, so I'm very optimistic in that sense. And I think that's possible to trust that Brazil has a good future, provide the Brazilian ruling class will be much more sensitive against corruption and more concerned with internal domestic situations.
Fernando Henrique Cardoso, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.